There. I'm like, stop sharing.
So that will be at our February 18th meeting. And then our final meeting of the year is kind of to wrap up and honor those grant winners that Danny mentioned. We invite our teachers usually to come together in person to receive their grants, and we are able to provide scholarships. Last year, we were able to actually provide 4 to graduating seniors who have participated in the GT program. And so we were really excited because we'd only done 1 a year until last year, and that is a fairly new program. It kicked off 3 years ago. So anyway, the work that we do is extremely important, and you know, we are here for you, and we are thrilled again to have you all here tonight. The only other thing I'll mention is that we do have to raise that money for those grants, and so we usually do that through the walkathon. And I want to thank everyone who participated in that virtual walkathon. Last spring, we had planned it to be in person, and then COVID hit, and we ended up doing the virtual, and it was actually pretty successful. So we'll probably want to offer it, hopefully, in both formats. Hopefully, this will all be behind us, and we'll be able to come together, but also offer virtual format, because that worked out really well to help raise money. One of the other things that we have done in the last couple of years that we're really excited about is we started a parent support group. So there's a national organization called the Social and Emotional Needs of Gifted. It's SENG, S-E-N-G, and they have an official training program. And last year, Jennifer Boyer, our GT specialist at Mernon, got certified as a SENG trainer. And she had come to us and said, I really want to start this group. And so it was awesome. She recruited Sandra De Leon, who is our GT specialist at RABA, to help her as her co-facilitator. And Sandra enjoyed it so much that she went this summer and got certified as well. So we have 2 certified SENG trainers on our GT staff, and they're going to share a little bit about this unique opportunity that I hope some of you will want to take advantage of. So without further ado, I'm going to turn it over to Jennifer and Sandra. Thank you, ladies.
Hi, everyone. And Jen, don't forget to unmute yourself. Welcome to our GTEAC meeting, and Mrs. Boyer and I are super excited to share a little bit about our plans for this year.
Yes, it seems to be the phrase of the year is "you're muted." So I apologize for that. It's pretty standard. My kids remind me every single day, my students. Thank you so much for taking time out of your evening to be here. Sandra and I, just this evening, we're going to introduce the book study group that we have, and just tell you a little bit about it, and then explain to you what our plans are for this year. So let me go ahead and switch over. Hopefully everybody can see. We use what's called the SENG model, and as Kim said a minute ago, that is the model that we use whenever we do a parent group book study. And so as you saw, SENG stands for Supporting Emotional Needs of the Gifted. It was founded by a psychologist named Dr. James T. Webb. And it was begun because many parents came to him because they felt that there was a great need for gifted kids to understand themselves and for parents to understand them. Not many parents realize that their kids who are identified as gifted are special needs. And so he began this group, and so it's aimed at parents. It's a grassroots initiative to help parents understand their kids better and communicate with them.
So we will be sharing out this slideshow with Meredith, and she'll be posting it. So you have access to this little video, and feel free to peruse it, because it will have, he explains in depth as to the inspiration and the why behind this parent group.
Yes, this is our Dr. Webb, very gentle soul. Okay, and so again, one of the things that he says when he began the group is that gifted kids can learn to work with their high sensitivities and feel balanced, happy, and at peace, and their parents as well.
So what is the parent group and what is it not? It's not going to be therapy or a teaching group, not an advocacy group. That's what this is here. You're here at a meeting that's an advocacy group. It's not going to be a finger pointing or complaining session where we judge each other or we threaten, and it's not going to be taken lightly. It is a guided discussion group based on the book that we're going to be talking a little bit about in a little while. And it's dedicated to nurturing and encouraging. It's a place to share and trade parenting recipes, a safe place where you feel free to discuss, and everything that's discussed is confidential. It's insightful and a place where we can build on parenting techniques. And I say we because I'm also a parent of 2 gifted children. And it is hard work, so expect to do some homework and expect to do some reading.
So the foundation of our study is this book right here. It's called A Parent's Guide to Gifted Children. And it was actually written for the purpose of helping for this whole group and helping parents to communicate better and work with their children better. If you would like to join the group or not, either way, we encourage you to purchase this book because it's extremely helpful. And you can get it from 2 places. There's a website called Gifted Unlimited, and that's the publisher, or Amazon, of course, is cheaper. The price actually went down after last year. And so this is the most recent price. And again, so whether or not you would like to do the book study together with other gifted parents, we encourage you to get the book because it is an extremely helpful resource.
And I've even gone back to it as a resource. So sometimes I want to refer to a particular topic. And so I have mine tabbed and highlighted and pencil marked and everything. So it's a great resource. But what are the parents saying? So here's a couple of quotes directly from the feedback that we received from our parents who participated in the group in the spring. But I'm going to go rogue a little bit, Jen, because we actually have one of those parents here. And Mr. McKinney, I'm going to totally put you on the spot. But can you please tell the group, because what's better feedback than from the person who participated? And so Barry, can you tell us a little bit about your experience, and would you recommend this to other parents?
Hold on, ladies. Barry doesn't have unmute power, so give me just a second.
So Barry McKinney. Thanks, Meredith.
You got it.
Surprise.
Thanks. Not a problem. Yeah, I would say, and I think that quote that's there first probably was from us. This program really was a gift to our family. And we were, I guess, in the beta group, the test group that was a part of it. The book is amazing, and so I would recommend it to everybody. But more importantly, the group was really awesome. We started in person. We ended up in COVID land and did our last meetings virtually. But it really was a really nice opportunity, if for nothing else, than to know that there are other parents that are going through the same things that we go through with gifted children. And so I like the slide before this that talked about it being sharing recipes, because it really is an opportunity to do that. We learned a lot about our kids through the process, which really helped us. And we learned a lot about ourselves and ways to help our children and to really help advocate for them as well. So I felt like it was a great thing. The side product of that is we met some really awesome families across the district. And so I would definitely encourage it to everybody.
Thank you, Barry. We really appreciate that.
Yes, thank you, Barry, for letting us put you on the spot. And I think what the biggest aha moments or the biggest takeaway for our families have been that, oh my gosh, you mean to tell me that that's normal in a gifted child and I'm not the only one in the world who's experiencing this as a parent? And knowing that you're not alone as a parent of a gifted child. So those were the big takeaways, and overall just having that understanding so that we can become better parents to the kids.
And oftentimes, parents of gifted kids feel like they don't have anybody else to talk to because there's kind of a stigma attached to it, as if you talk to somebody else whose child has not been identified, it's almost like you're bragging. You feel like you're bragging, but or you know, they may feel, you're worried that they may feel, why are you complaining? You know, you have a gifted kid. And so oftentimes there are so many myths associated with gifted children, and parents are afraid that if they do speak out about their issues and concerns, then those myths will be perpetuated. And so it's not a comfortable place. So this book study is a comfortable, safe place for you to be able to discuss worries or concerns that you have about your kids. Okay, so what about, now that we've hopefully sold you on the book study, what are the logistics? We will be meeting twice in the fall. One session will be in October, and we're actually going to have only 2 sessions. We're not going to do an entire book study because we know everybody's schedule, and in the world of COVID that things are very crazy. And so we'll have 2 sessions in October. I'm sorry, 1 session in October with 2 dates, and then another one in November. And then Sandra, if you want to talk about the Spanish session.
Absolutely. So we know the importance of our Spanish-speaking families, and being a second language learner, English is my second language, and I understand that, and it's very dear to my heart. So I know Kim and Courtney know that I'm always advocating for our bilingual families and our Spanish-speaking families. So that is in the works, and it will come to us in early spring. So we want to test this, how this is going to look for us in the fall and how families respond to this plan. And then we'll put something in place for the spring. So early in the spring. So look out for more details. And of course, I'm saying this is in English, and hopefully our Spanish-speaking families will listen in.
And so, of course, it's going to be held over Zoom. And unfortunately, we would like to be able to offer more spots for each session. But the reason that we keep the numbers low is so that we are able to have a more intimate group, so that it's just safer, because as you can see, when we have a very large group, it's a little bit more difficult to have that sense of family. And so that is why we limit our groups to 10 per group. And people will be chosen by lottery. What will happen is we will send out a form for you to complete if you are interested in participating. It will be sent out by your child's campus's GT specialist. You'll receive that, and you need to complete it by the date given. And then we will choose people by lottery, and you'll be notified as soon as possible once that's done, at least a couple of weeks before our book study starts, so that you'll have time, unless you've already purchased the book for your own reading.
And so here is our contact information, and our contact information is coming up, but this is our reason why. So both Jennifer and I are moms of gifted children who were schooled in Northside. Jennifer now has 2 adult daughters who are living in Kansas and Wisconsin, and I have an adult child and also a 4th grader. So we are many years educators, and we both have a passion for our gifted population. And in the next slide is going to be our contact information. Oh, well, pictures of our kids. And there's our email. So if you have any questions about this group and what it's going to look like and what we can offer and the book, anything at all, please reach out to us and we will respond as best as we can.
Thank y'all for listening. And thanks again, Barry, for helping us out.
Okay, thank you, ladies. Again, we are so fortunate to have teachers who, you know, are to go the extra miles. Like I said, this whole thing was Jennifer's idea. She came to us and said, I want to get certified to do this. And then Sandra stepped right in, and the Spanish group was completely their idea as well. So we hope to see this expand again. Last year was our very first one, and we just hope to see it grow and grow, because I do believe there's a need. I had the opportunity to sit in on one of their groups, and I was really impressed by just the conversations that went on. So it was really good. So I think without further ado, I believe we do have our guest speaker on here on Zoom. Yes. So I'm going to read a quick little bio about our guest. Her name is Christine Fonseca, and she is a licensed educational psychologist. She's a critically acclaimed author and a nationally recognized speaker on topics related to educational psychology, mental health, giftedness, and using storytelling to heal past wounds. She has written several books, and they are, I would encourage you to go onto her website, but one of her really critically acclaimed titles is Emotional Intensity in Gifted Students. And she calls herself, I believe she claims that intensities is her superpower. And so Christine, I believe, lives in Southern California. And again, we are so happy to have her join us to Northside in San Antonio. Christine, are you here?
I am here, and I'm so happy to be here.
Hey, good, thank you. We were really scared. We actually reached our maximum for this meeting. So congratulations to all of you for coming early. There are a lot of people who tried to get in who couldn't, and unfortunately, Christine was one of them.
Yep, but I got in.
To get a guest in. But the meeting is being recorded, so if you have friends that have texted you that they were not able to get in, it will be available on our Facebook page, I believe, afterwards. Right, Meredith? Yes? Okay. Okay, well, without further ado, Christine, take it away. Thank you.
Thank you. Well, thank you for that very nice introduction. I'm so excited to be here talking about my favorite subject, which is parenting gifted kids. I'm going to share my screen so I can pull up. I have a little PowerPoint share in our little bit of time together. So let me just get it going. All right. All right. So as we go through, I'm a pretty loose presenter. So if you have questions, you can put them in the chat and I'll try to keep half an eye on that. Otherwise, there will be time at the end to also do a little bit of a Q&A afterwards. So my name's Christine Fonseca, and as she already introduced me, you can see that I am a school psychologist and a licensed educational psychologist, and have been an author working very intensely in the field of gifted education for about 15 years. I've been a psychologist for just over 20 years. As we start today, I really wanted to talk with you guys about supporting the social emotional needs of gifted kids, given kind of this craziness that we're currently living in. I feel like every day we can turn on the news and find something else to completely freak us out if we want to. And our kids can find all of that too. And because our kids are gifted kids, they're just more plugged in to what's true in the world right now than some other kids might be. You know, their concerns are big global concerns. I remember, I don't know, 10, 15 years ago, I was working with a group of gifted fourth graders, third and fourth graders, and I asked them, what are some things you worry about right now in the world? And not one of them said that they were worried about what was on the Disney Channel or what their friends were wearing, or some of those more mundane concerns. Every single kid in that room told me that they were worried about things like global warming or war. We happen to live near a military base, so there was a lot of concerns about wars going on in the Middle East. We had some kids concerned about tsunamis that were happening and whether or not that could happen in Hawaii, because they knew people in Hawaii, and those kinds of really big issues. And our kids today are dealing with the same kinds of things. So ultimately, as parents, we always want our kids to thrive. So I want you to take a couple of moments and just throw an answer into the chat box of, what does that even mean to you? What does it mean to say you want to thrive? So we have some answers starting to come in. That's great. Things like succeed, or finding joy and growth, happiness. I love this. I love all the growth mindset in the room. I really appreciate that. So as you're thinking about what does it mean to really thrive right now, and what does that mean for your family, I want you to also take a moment and, on a scale of 1 to 5, with 1 being, man, we got this, we're thriving, and with 5 being, yeah, I don't even know if I can say we're surviving right now, let alone thriving, I want you to put what that is for you, a scale of 1 to 5. Go ahead and put that in the box for me. So we got a lot of 3s. That's where I normally see this fall. Couple of 1s, couple of 2s. I know it changes for me, probably hourly, depending on what's happening in life, right? I try to keep myself around a 4 or 5, but I can't say we always do. I know within the last week, we've had a death in our extended family, and my daughter managed to give herself a mild concussion doing nothing really. So again, these kinds of things vary. But as we think about this concept of having our kids thrive, I want you to really start to think about how these world stressors are factoring into all of this. Oh my gosh. Okay, Kelly, with your post coffee, girl, we should talk. Like, that's me. But I want you guys to just kind of think of the role that stress may play with all of this. So Kelly McGonigal is one of my favorite researchers and authors in the area of stress. She has a really great TED Talk about making a friend of stress. That's out. If you've never read it or never seen her TED Talk or read her book, I highly recommend. But she has a quote in her book that says that stress and meaning are intrinsically linked. You don't stress about things you don't care about, and you actually can't have a full, meaningful life without experiencing stress. So when you think about what has happened in the world and the way it may have impacted you, and the fact that you want your kids to thrive, think about the things that are really impacting your family in terms of stress or anxiety right now, and throw those into the chat for me as well. Yeah, job loss is a huge one. Virtual learning. How many of you guys are like stressed out over this whole distance learning thing and how to coordinate all of that? Routines, health, juggling work and virtual learning. Yep. Concerns around the vaccine. I think we're going to start to see that more and more and more. Money, space, yes. Keeping up with work. Yeah, all of these things are really normal. So the good news is, every single one of you who's responding right now, yeah, welcome to humanity. We are all in the exact same boat. What's unique about you guys is you guys are raising gifted children, and gifted children are naturally intense. That's a normal part of who they are. And so for you, that intensity may have hit like Mach 20 at this point. And so where everybody's dealing with stress and we all have a lot of this going on right now, for you, in your family, it might just be at a whole different place, which might cause you to question your own sanity, let alone anybody else's sanity in the household. So what are some things that we need to know? And then we'll get to some strategies that you guys can do. So when you think of the word stress, what are some things that immediately come to mind? What does the word stress mean to you? Go ahead and drop that in the chat real quick as well. Anxiety, what else? What are some other? Fear, frustration, no sleep, lack of self-control, being overwhelmed, pressure. Yeah, so that's typically what I hear when I answer this question. What's a word that defines stress? I'll hear things related to feeling overwhelmed, to being fear, too much pressure, all of these things. And if you'll notice, there's a theme with lots of these words, and it's not a particularly positive one, right? We tend to think of stress in really, really negative terms, but here's where we got that wrong. Stress is actually neither positive or negative. It is a natural biological response, like an alarm clock, telling us that there's something out of sync that needs our attention. That's really all that it is. It's neither good nor bad. Now, why is it important that we actually think of stress in those terms? Well, Kelly McGonigal talks in her book about a really great study, and they have been replicated since, that was done that takes the original stress studies that made us all think of stress as a bad thing and kind of added to it, coming up with slightly different responses. So a typical stress study, they ask people, all the participants, they give them a survey to see all the things in their lives that might be causing stress. And then they follow these same participants across a lifetime until they die and take a look at public records to see why they died and see if there's any correlation between why they died and the level of stress that they had. And typically speaking, you find that the more stress you're under, the more likely it is that you will die from a stress-related illness, things like heart disease, things related to diabetes, type 2 diabetes, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. Well, for this particular study, they did the same thing. They gave the participants a particular survey and to see how much stress they were under, but they added a question. And the question they added was, do you believe stress is bad for your health? Yes or no? What they found in analyzing the results after they looked at those death records is that sure enough, people under a lot of stress tend to die earlier from a stress-related illness. However, this was only true for people who also defined stress as being bad for your health. Now let's think about that a minute. It wasn't the stress itself necessarily, but it was the believing stress was bad for you. How do I know this? Because people who indicated that they were under a lot of stress, but did not view stress as being bad for you, were less likely to die from a stress-related illness than people who had relatively low levels of stress. So really what that means is that the belief that stress is bad for you is really the thing that's most bad for you and can cause premature death. So it's really important to know what our definitions of stress are to help correct incorrect thoughts about stress that our children may have, and then to practice and teach some different ways that we can support our students or our children when they're experiencing high levels of stress. So let's talk a little bit about what happens when the brain and body are under stress. So when the brain is stressed out, we tend to have a general feeling of unease. We might have rapid or mumbling speech. We might reduce our productivity. We might have a hard time. In fact, we often have a hard time learning new information. We might be confused. We might have some difficulty making decisions. With our gifted kids in particular, we might see lots more irritability or reduced attention or a lot of emotional upheaval. Within our bodies, we have some symptomatology as well. We tend to have physical symptoms like headaches, jaw pain. We might grind our teeth more. We might have blushing or heart palpitations, dry mouth, difficulty breathing. These are all normal signs that our body is experiencing a stress response. Remember, a stress response is not necessarily bad. It's just a biological function designed to alert us that we must do something to mitigate the stress that we're under. There's three real ways that our body reacts and responds to stress. So this first one is our adaptive stress response. It's everything we've talked about. That's a normal fight, flight, or freeze response. It happens in response to a specific event that triggers us, gets us stressed out, and then we have this response that works like an alarm clock that tells us we need to do something. We do something and things start to calm down. That's how it's supposed to work. Right now, we have all kind of hit our max limit for that kind of adaptive stress response. And so most of us are really more in this maladaptive stress response. This occurs when the triggering event lasts longer than about 20 or 30 minutes. Well, considering most of us have been living with the threat of COVID since February or earlier, I would say that most of us have hit the maladaptive point of stress. When this happens, a couple of things happen. On a good side, our front part of our brain that makes decisions that had shut down during fight or flight, it actually eases up and starts to open back up. The reason for that is we need to start problem solving how we're going to get out of this stressy situation that we're in. So that's not a bad thing. The other thing that happens is a secondary feature of our stress cycle. Now, most of us know about adrenaline. That's what causes our fight or flight. But the secondary response that comes online is fueled by a different neurochemical called oxytocin. Oxytocin is great. It's our friend. We're going to talk more about oxytocin in a little bit. We like oxytocin. Oxytocin does a couple of things for us. One, it motivates us to seek comfort from another human. So it motivates a social response. The other thing that's really cool about oxytocin and why it's so important in our stress response is it's a natural inflammatory, and it attaches to our vital organs, in particular the heart, and it works to buffer and heal the heart of the potential damage of adrenaline and cortisol. So we actually have this natural biological system at play designed to help us survive any particular stressful threats with not a lot of bad will that will happen to us, not a lot of bad things. See, this flies kind of in the face of some of the original stress studies on adrenaline and cortisol that showed little foxes dying from undue stress related to hunts, related to the cortisol, which is why we've all decided that, oh my gosh, it's so bad for us. We just didn't realize that we actually had this natural other thing happening too with oxytocin. But what happens when we are pushed to connect socially and we can't? Either we can't because in our mind we think the only way to connect socially is in person, and right now that's not very safe, or we can't because we don't have a network of friends or support at home, or the stressors just keep piling on top so much so that we can no longer cope. When this happens and we have extended periods of stress, as many of us are going through right now, we begin to enter what's considered a toxic or traumatic stress response. And when you hear a lot about the trauma that's happening right now, about what people are feeling, about people losing jobs, homes getting burned down in the California fires, people getting flooded out in the hurricanes, those kinds of things, when you start to hear about all of that and the impact of trauma, what you're really talking about in terms of trauma is the impact of the toxic stress response. So when we shift into more of a toxic response, this is when it actually becomes damaging and can become very damaging to us over the long haul. Some of the things that can happen, most typically, our brain shuts down completely to new learning and really resorts back to old patterns of behavior that enabled us to survive events, no matter how maladaptive they are. Sometimes we turn... Here's the question of the hour. How many of you guys who might like a glass of wine every now and then find yourself drinking just a little more wine than you used to? Or maybe wine's not your poison. Maybe it's dark chocolate, or maybe it's exercise because that's what you want to do. But many of us are kind of resorting to different things we used to do to pull ourselves out of this toxic response. Some of those things might be healthy. Oftentimes those things are not healthy because they cause us to detach. And sometimes that's actually not what we need. Some typical ways that you could know whether or not your child or you, anybody else in your household for that matter, might be dealing with toxic levels of stress are through this little chart right here. So these are some very typical things you can expect to see if the stress level has become toxic in your house. So cognitive refers to our brain and what we're thinking about. We might have really distorted thinking. Our attention might not be there. As you heard in the introduction, I am a writer. I love to write. I write all the time. I have not written a whole lot since we went down on lockdown. It's just the bandwidth, right? The creative bandwidth has just not been all the way there until recently when I made some shifts in kind of what I do day in and day out. That's helped a lot. The big thing that we might see with our gifted kids are some nightmares and some disruptions to their executive functioning. Now, many of our gifted kids already struggle a little bit with executive functions, especially if they are a twice exceptional kiddo. So you might really notice it. Nightmares are also something very common because of the level of imagination and imaginational intensity that our gifted kids have. So that's something to kind of look for. Emotionally, there might be a real increased sense of fear or sadness or depressive-like feelings. There might be a lot of helplessness. And then one of two extremes may be happening. They may be more intense now than ever, or they may have numbed themselves out completely and they have completely dissociated from what's going on. And now they're just not demonstrating any of that at all. Both of those things, both extremes, are kind of a warning sign that you may need to do a little work in this area with them. And then social and behavioral, you might see increased aggression. There's been lots of cases of increased violence. We might have some school refusal or impairment. You might have some decreased frustration tolerance, increased tantruming behaviors, maybe old behaviors that are starting to come back. So all of these kinds of things are pretty typical if you're at a toxic level of stress. So what can you do about that? Well, this is where you want to kind of really dial in and beef up resiliency. Now, the brain is a really interesting thing. Our brain is highly unique, far more unique than we ever realized. And the brain is responsible for hundreds, plural, hundreds of different processes that go on. As the brain processes information and becomes really good at that, really efficient, which is true with our gifted kids, we actually see an increase in integration in the brain. All of the different parts of the brain start working in sync and working together. The higher the level of integration in the brain, the more resilience, because that integration is actually the biology of what resilience looks like. So anytime we can do things in our children to support the development of their social awareness, emotional and behavioral regulation, empathy, compassion, grit, all of these kinds of things, in addition to things like what's called theory of the mind, which is where we begin to understand where I start and stop as a human and where you start and stop as a human, so we can learn about boundaries. All of these kinds of things promote resilience development, and it is the resiliency that is the buffer to landing in toxic levels of stress or kind of rebooting after you're already in toxic levels of stress. So what are some ways that we can build resilience and kind of really help our kids? This next little section is just some very specific strategies that you can use with your children to capitalize on existing brain chemistry and give yourself and your kids a boost where you need one to help kind of deal with these challenging times. So the first chemical, happiness chemical, I want to talk about is dopamine. Most of us are familiar with dopamine. Dopamine are the happy hits we get when we eat chocolate or drink wine. This is why we tend to do those things. So dopamine's known as a reward chemical. It enables motivation. In fact, if you are dealing with a really big motivation issue in your household, odds are exceptionally good that you have a dopamine problem. Our students who have attention difficulties, maybe they're diagnosed with ADHD, and even some of our students on the spectrum, although the research isn't quite as clear on that, almost always have a deficit in dopamine that is creating some of that motivational glitch that you might see with your kids. When dopamine is working effectively in your body, it's enabling motivation, it's enabling learning, it strengthens your grit and your determination. When it's low, you tend to see low self-esteem, low energy, problems with attention focus, mood swings, and lots of procrastination. So what do we do about it if it feels like it's low? As weird as this sounds, completing a simple task and being able to cross it off your to-do list will give you a dopamine hit every time. Many of you guys might be to-do list freaks. You like a to-do list. In fact, you like a to-do list so much that you might write a few things on that to-do list at the beginning of the day that you just completed, just so you can highlight them or cross them off or whatever you do. I see a couple of you giggling, so I know it's true. This works because it actually just boosted your dopamine. So I totally get it. So completing a task will help. Self-care will help. Food helps. And then celebrating little wins. I strongly advise that if you are not in the habit of celebrating the little baby wins right now, start celebrating little baby wins. You are bombarded with reasons to feel frustrated and upset and like you're not getting anywhere. The more of that information that comes in, the lower your dopamine. So you have to just be willing to celebrate those little things, make a to-do list, create some goals. If it doesn't look like you're going to hit the goal, change the goal. Human beings are so weird. We think that when we set this goal, like we can't reset it. Of course you can reset it. You set the goal. It doesn't matter if you reset it. What's really more important is that you achieve it. Because if you can achieve it and get the dopamine hit, then you start telling your brain, you're training your brain to hit your goals. So if you set a goal and it's too high and it's really clear you're not going to make it, do yourself a favor, reset that goal to something you know you can achieve, so you achieve it, so you get the dopamine hit, so you start to rehearse achieving goals in your brain. All right, what's another happiness chemical? I mentioned it early, oxytocin. Oxytocin is affectionately known as the love hormone or the cuddle hormone. It gives you a feeling of trust. It motivates you to connect with others and decreases your fears against doing so. So it reduces the threat of reaching out while simultaneously encouraging you to reach out. It also helps with attachments and bonding. You can tell you have an oxytocin problem when you feel overly stressed, but more importantly, when you feel really lonely or disconnected. Oftentimes, low oxytocin can disrupt sleep, making you feel more tired, which then just creates kind of this self-fulfilling prophecy. You don't want to reach out to others because you're too tired to reach out to others. And so you don't reach out to others, which makes you feel lonely, which just throws you into this horrible cycle. So a couple of things you could do. If you have a pet, the research is super clear. Petting an animal's fur will boost your oxytocin significantly. I cannot emphasize that enough. If you don't have a pet, that's fine. There are other kinds of tactile things you can do as well that will do the same thing. Hug a family member. Make sure there are people within your personal bubble so that you're not having any safety issues with the pandemic. Hold hands with somebody at home. If you can't do any of those things, give compliments. You can give those online. You don't need to actually physically touch anybody for that one. So if all of the members of your household have COVID but you, and you need to boost your oxytocin, give a bunch of compliments. Find reasons to compliment people and to focus on what's good. All of those things can trick the brain into producing a little extra oxytocin. Socializing, even virtually, can do it. A massage can do it once we're allowed to do those things, or massage each other in the household. Embodiment practices. What do I mean by an embodiment practice? Things like dancing, things like walking barefoot outside in the dirt. All of these kinds of things actually help ground the body really well. And when we ground the body really well, we're actually kind of helping hack our oxytocin levels. Meditation can help as well, as can, of all things, a cold shower, because of the way it activates the nervous system. Although cold showers are better for something we're going to talk about in a moment, but I did want to make sure to mention that here as well. All right, how about serotonin? Most of us know what serotonin is. Serotonin is your mood chemical, and it's directly responsible for what kinds of mood you're able to maintain. I lovingly said to my husband when we were married early on, he was a snorer, that for several years in our marriage, I never had any serotonin in my body because I had such disrupted sleep. The reason I said that is because the most natural way our body makes serotonin is only during moments of deep sleep. This is an issue, especially if you're a woman of a certain age like I am, when sleep tends to get a little bit more disrupted, especially deep sleep. Serotonin is a little harder to come by. Now, serotonin is really important because it creates feelings of calm, it creates feelings of acceptance, and it creates feelings of importance. You start to develop belief structures that I am seen and I am heard when you have good serotonin in your body. When you are running low on serotonin, you are particularly emotionally sensitive. You might start to develop some social phobias and mood swings. You might have a little OCD. Many of us have been running on really lean serotonin ever since all this started. And for those of you in the room who also might be educators or essential frontline workers, you guys are very low on serotonin because of extreme sleep deprivation. And so this can become a really big deal. Some of the things we can do to boost our serotonin, first and foremost, is sleep, especially deep sleep. If you wear a Fitbit like I do, you can kind of monitor how you're doing with deep sleep. If you're not doing very well with deep sleep, you might want to take a look at your sleep practices to change that a little bit. But there are other things you can do as well. Being out in nature, swimming, sunshine, these are all things that can really boost serotonin. Fortunately, just like I do, you guys live in a sun belt. You get lots of sun, so you're not prone to kind of that winter blues that many places are prone to. You can keep your serotonin pretty healthy and happy just by being outside. Relax, mindfulness, and cold showers. This is another place where cold showers can be really effective. And that's particularly true if you guys go through a long stretch of rain or it's just cloudier than it usually is, plus you're not getting much sleep. This is when you want to resort to things like a cool shower that activates your nervous system and can really help with your serotonin. And finally, the last one, endorphin. For my runners in the room, most of you guys know what endorphin is. Endorphin is our biological painkiller that naturally exists in our body. It gives us euphoria in moments of stress. It can mask physical pain, and it can do quite a bit to alleviate anxiety. When our endorphin levels are low, because we haven't been outside, or we're not exercising anymore because we're constantly at home staring at a screen for some reason, then we can develop things like anxiety and depression, aches, pains, and mood swings. So some of the things we can do, the easiest thing you can do to get in a little endorphin rush is start laughing. So even if you have to fake it initially, typically speaking, if you just start laughing for no reason whatsoever because you're totally faking it, it'll feel really funny, and then you'll just start laughing for real because you'll realize how silly you look laughing for no reason. So find reasons to laugh. Essential oils can help as well. Dark chocolate, any form of exercise where you can build up a little sweat. All of these things will help create moments of endorphin for you. Couple of interesting ways when I was doing research for this that I thought to hack endorphin that I stumbled across that I really liked. Spicy food can do it. So if you guys live in San Antonio, so you got some access to some spicy food if you want some. So that can help a little bit. Creating art. And when all else fails, watch something that makes you really sad and just cry it out. Like all of these things can produce a little bit of an endorphin kick. So in addition to these 4 neurochemicals, I wanted to share one other protocol that I find really, really helpful, in particular with my gifted kids, although I'll be honest, I have used it across the board with children as young as 4 and adults as old as 84 and everybody in between to help move pretty quickly a person from a state of severe anxiety into a state of calm. And it's a protocol I call ROAR. ROAR stands for Relax, Orient, Attune, and Release. And it's just really a technique that I developed when I wrote Letting Go, A Girl's Guide to Breaking Free of Stress and Anxiety as kind of a way to deal with those anxiety attacks when they come on. So let's take each of the steps. The first one is relax. A good way to think of this is as though you were telling yourself, okay, I'm gonna be okay. I can get through this. I just need to breathe. These are specific strategies that help relax the brain and the body. These are important because we can't even begin to get ourselves out of a state of anxiety if we're freaking out. And so this allows us to calm down and to slow down our stress response so that we can do something. A couple of really good strategies for relax are things like breathing in and out very slowly. And my favorite, which is called breathing colors. I think I mentioned that in emotional intensity, but I know I do in 101 Success Secrets. Breathing colors is just like doing deep breathing exercises with one caveat. There's a visualization to go with it. I use a color. So I tell the student or the child I'm working with to imagine their favorite calming color. They want to breathe it in and picture it filling their whole body. And when they exhale, they want to exhale their ugliest, stressiest color, whatever that color is. You usually ask them what that color is so you know that they have a good visual. So they inhale the calm color, exhale the stressy color, and they continue to slowly do that until the inhalation and exhalation match. It just adds a visual cue so that kids can start to self-identify when they've in fact actually relaxed. Once we're relaxed, now it's time to orient. Orient is when we look inside and we say, okay, I'm not going to worry about the future. I'm not going to ruminate over the past. I'm just going to focus on right now and anchor myself in whatever's happening right this minute. These are specific strategies to help increase your present moment's awareness and to just focus on here and now. Mindfulness, 4-7-8 breathing is all really good. 4-7-8 breathing, for those of you who are not familiar, is a specific technique when our exhalation is longer than our inhalation, and there is a pause in between the inhalation and exhalation. The reason it works is because it activates what's called our vagus nervous system, and our vagal nervous system actually is a calming system. It almost immediately releases the hold of anxiety. So you want to do things that activate that part of your body. Once we're relaxed and we're focused on the here and now we can attune. We can start to ask ourselves, what do I need right now in this moment? And that's what this step is all about. It includes the development of voice and agency so that we can express those needs. It's not enough to just know what you need, but you have to be able to know how to get what you need also. This is really important because it starts to reactivate, I should say, our front part of our brain and get that back online and working. When this is done well, if you have a trauma-impacted child or a trauma-impacted family that you're with, it can help to rebuild trust and safety internally and externally, which is part of the damage that happens with toxic stress, is these threats of safety happen. This is a really good way to rewrite that script. We can do this through both discernment and emotional literacy. Emotional literacy is when we have words to be able to talk about our emotions. Usually that's why this step can get really hard, is when we don't have words for it. And then discernment is the ability to tell the difference between something you have control over and something you did not have control over, as well as big worries versus little worries. So if I'm dealing with a young child, gifted child, everything feels like a big worry. The whole world feels like a big worry. I stubbed my toe, it's a big worry. I lost my homework, it's a big worry. The dog died, it's a big worry. You name it, it's all a big worry. And some of those things really are, but a lot of those things might not be. And so discernment is about learning how to tell the difference between the two. Once we've done those 3 steps, we're ready to do the last step. The last step is release. Really, I find this one to be the hardest for people to do. This is when we learn to release the hold that stress has on us and to lean into those feelings no matter how scary they are. Most of us, if you think about the last time you got really worried or stressed about something, you probably had some sort of physical indication that you were stuck or resisting. Your jaw got tight, your shoulders got tight, your hands might have balled into fists, you might feel aches and pains in your body right after. Those are all signs that you are resisting what's happening. Releasing is the opposite of that. Instead of being the stone getting hit by the water, you're the piece of seaweed fully anchored into the ground and going with the flow when the wave comes to get you. The reason this last step is so important is because it prevents you from giving your brain a script that's toxic about how to respond to stress. And we can do this through breathing exercises again. Any of those embodiment things like dancing and laughing can help, as well as learning to correct our maladaptive thought patterns. So between the 4 chemicals that I gave you some hacks on, and then the ROAR strategy, all of that should be able to arm you with some really specific ways that you can deal with stress and anxiety that might be happening in your house right now, and all of the stressors that your kids are feeling and are undoubtedly showing up. I have my email address on here. Please don't hesitate to email me if you have a question about this or anything else. I am happy to share this PowerPoint and so that you guys can have access to that. I will send that over to them. I'm happy to do that if you'd like to have that. And if there are any questions, I'm happy to take any questions if we have a little time.
So I have enabled it so that you are able to unmute your microphone if you are interested in asking a question. Please
And if
feel
you
free
asked
to
one
do so.
earlier and I missed it, sorry.
We have one person who has their hand raised, and that's
Excellent.
Gregory Johnson.
Go for it. Unmute and ask.
Are you there, Gregory? Maybe he gave up. I don't know.
Maybe.
So there's been a lot of really great conversation in the chat. I really appreciate that. We'll give it just a few more minutes to see if anybody has a question or would like to direct, to ask Ms. Fonseca directly. Anybody? Okay.
All right.
Fernando, it looks like you unmuted your iPhone. Fernando's iPhone.
Yes. Yes. I'm actually at work. I don't know if you can hear me.
I can hear you.
I actually had a question. The book that you guys talked about on Amazon, can you repeat the name of the book?
Yes, I think that book was the one from the Sing Parent Group. Jennifer Boyer, can you give him that information?
Parenting Gifted Children by James T. Webb.
Yes. It's
I happen to be here.
a parent's guide to gifted children.
Mhm.
The Parent's Guide to Gifted Children. Okay.
Yes. Yes. And it's also
By
in the
Jane
chat,
White.
but it's way far up in the chat.
Okay. And when I first connected to this Zoom meeting, it said that they were recording. Is this video going to be available for us?
Yes, we're recording it. I'm gonna have to download it and then I will upload it to YouTube and we will share that link out both with our GT specialists so they can share it out for your kids to access or to your parent email addresses. And we'll post it on our Twitter, on our Facebook, and I'll send it out through Remind. So there will be a link coming. Somebody in the chat mentioned earlier that, you know, we have a lot of different ways of communicating and sometimes it gets a little confusing. Our goal is really to be as available to y'all as possible with over 107,000 kids in the district and us trying to reach every little pockets at each campus. It's just a little easier for us to post it in multiple places to meet everybody's individual needs. So I hope y'all understand that's why we don't just have one way of doing it. We want to get everybody in there.
I did get a couple questions that came in. Do you have another question, Fernando, before I mention those?
No, ma'am. I'm done. That was it for me.
Okay.
Thank you.
So a couple of questions that came in. One was, what is a good definition for executive functioning? So executive functioning is something that happens in the front part of the brain, but the easiest way to think about what it is, it's that ability to organize oneself to achieve a goal, to be able to take a goal and to break it into little parts so that you can achieve it, and to be able to get from point A to point B without anybody telling you how. So that's executive functioning. Another person asked, is there a way, like, how can you use ROAR with kids? ROAR was developed specifically for kids, and I literally teach them the word ROAR, and then what each one of those steps mean with an action plan for each one. And then when they demonstrate like dysregulation in their behavior, I ask them to remember to roar. I ask them, do you need to roar right now? Do you remember? And it tends to help quite a bit. Is there a difference between how boys and girls show stress? Yes, there actually is. Girls tend to be more internalizers. Boys are externalizers. What the heck do I mean by that? When a boy is stressed out, you will often see it in either aggressive behavior or frustration behavior or yelling behavior or tantruming behavior. You tend to see that a little bit more. With girls, you tend to see more of disconnecting or not wanting to talk to you anymore or going into their rooms or what we kind of stereotypically think of as anxiety. That's not true across the board, but it's more often true than not. And Barry, did you have a question? I see your hand raised.
Yes, ma'am. Thank you. First of all, this has been great information. My question is, if we can only do one thing with our kids, what would you recommend that one thing be during this time?
If you could only do one thing with your kids, I would focus on connecting with your kids so that they feel safe and secure. That has to be above everything else. Nothing else works without it. Good question. I like that one. Anything else? My plan is to hit reset and reconnect. I highly concur. That's a great idea. Especially if you felt yourself just kind of, if your household just kind of went out of whack for a little bit. Give yourself permission to do a mediocre job. All of you need to just decide that whatever you've done so far is the best you could do, and that's 100% fine, and let yourself off the hook. And now that you know a few different things to do, try something different. Some ways to connect. Family dinner, if you're not used to having it because everybody's so busy or too darn tired, or your dinner routine is just out of whack, go back to having some sort of a family meal together. The reason I say that is because it's just so nice to talk over a meal. Somebody mentioned Maslow's pyramid or hierarchy of needs. Absolutely. For those of you who love to read the latest, greatest, Scott Barry Kaufman came out with a book called Transcend, which is taking Maslow to the next level. It's where Maslow would have gone had Maslow not died before he got there. Scott Barry Kaufman just kind of picked up on that research and took it even further, and it really expands that hierarchy of needs. And what it says is, instead of thinking of this checklist of things we need to do, all of our basic needs and then our social needs, and then we can eventually get to our more esoteric needs, instead of thinking of it that way, it's really thinking about it a little bit differently so that we realize that those basic needs are literally the bare minimum. It's just what helps us function as humans in any capacity at all. And those esoteric needs, that sense of meaning, is what enables us to move forward in any capacity, which I like that idea of that. Anxiety-based responses when breathing techniques no longer work for children. First and foremost, we need to figure out why the breathing won't work. And the reason I say this is because oftentimes that breathing technique isn't working because our child does not have enough self-awareness to know when they need to use it. So oftentimes it looks like this. We taught our kids to breathe in and out. By the time they think of using it, they're way too stressed out to even make that work. So their version of breathing looks like hyperventilating. In fact, it functions like hyperventilating, which only makes them more stressed out. And then they come and tell you that this breathing stuff is ridiculous and it doesn't work, and stop telling them to do it. When the truth of the matter is, if they had tried it earlier, it probably would have worked, but now we're too late in the game. So in that case, I would start with teaching kids words to go with their feelings and teaching them how to check in with themselves earlier and more frequently. I had a student, middle school age student that I did a lot of work with. He was a gifted student, twice exceptional. And this was him. He just couldn't do that breathing stuff at all for some of these reasons. And so with him, we actually played a game. I gave him a homework assignment to go home and to play a computer game and to take note as to every single time he found himself either holding his breath or having like the white knuckle clutch on the game controllers, anything like that, anything that would indicate to him just a little bit of stress. And so he took really diligent notes on that and came back and shared it with me. And then I said, okay, now the next time you have a test in class, I want you to pay attention to how your body feels and see if any of these same things happen. And sure enough, there's like a collection of those exact same things that happened. And he came back and he shared, and I said, okay, these things that are happening at both of these times, that is your personal stress response. That is how your body reacts to a period of stress. Now, if you didn't start breathing until the end of that cycle last time, now I want you to try it earlier. I want you to try it the very first time your jaw feels tight, or the very first time maybe you get a sweaty palm, any of those kinds of things. And the minute he shifted that and started doing it that way, breathing suddenly started to work again. We had a couple of other questions. Somebody answered the twice exceptional. Thank you for the person who's answering that for me. ROAR, which is my protocol, stands for relax, orient, attune, and release. That's ROAR.
Okay. All right, I think at this time we are going to start to wrap up. So we want to say thank you so much to our special guest, Christine. You were extremely well received. There was tons of great comments in the session, and we're really excited to see you back on November 3rd for our staff. So we're
Excited
really
to be back.
to have you come back. So as for everybody else, before I turn it over to Danny, our next meeting will be November the 5th with Dr. Woods. And so I really hope to see this group continue to grow. And we'll be getting more information about the parent support group too before our next meeting. So without further ado, I'll turn it over to Danny. Thanks again for being here, everybody.
All right, thanks, Kim, and thanks, Christine, for speaking to our group. We really appreciate it. I think it's always good when, as a group as a whole, we see that a lot of us go through the same things. The other dates we wanted to mention: so November 5th will be Dr. Woods. February 18th is the early spring meeting, and April 22nd is the last meeting of the year. And this year we will be holding elections. So if any of y'all feel so inclined to come and contribute to the growth of GT within Northside, please participate and join us. I think the only last thought I wanted to leave you guys with, I guess there's two. Let me see. Meredith, can I share something from my screen? Let me see if I can do this. Here we go. All right. Can you guys see that? It's a Google Doodle. Does everybody see that?
Yes.
Okay, so this is the Google Doodle from September 21st, which was a few days ago. And my middle school daughter pointed it out to me. And I wanted to share it with you guys because it brought something to mind. So this depicts a scene from Laredo, Texas in the year 1914. And the men on the horses to the left are Texas Rangers. And on the right is a Mexican language newspaper called El Progreso. And that day, the Texas Rangers had gone to El Progreso to destroy its printing presses because they didn't like what was being printed. And there's a lady who stands in the doorway, and her name is Jovita Idar. And in Texas history, this moment is captured in a lot of different places. And my daughter brought it to my attention because I'm very familiar with the story, because Jovita Idar was my grandmother's aunt. And I was looking at this picture this week, and my daughter who showed it to me, and I was wondering, is this what gifted looked like in 1914 for a Hispanic woman living on Laredo, Texas? And I realized that we don't have that world today because we have people who take the time to build gifted and talented programs to teach children to go out and change the world. And, this always reminds me of that moment. And I look at my girls and I think of Jovita and her great nieces not having to experience life quite like that. And so I wanted to share that with you because I think the work that we try to do in the organization is to grow and teach. And the thing that was most exciting about this was that I would have never seen it had my daughter not pointed it out to me. And she pointed it out to me because I had taken the time to tell her this story, and she knew who that was and why it was important in our family. And so it goes back to what is the best thing we can be doing right now in this time And it is connecting to our kids that way. So I go into work very early. I try to go into work about 6 and get my workday done early so I can spend my evenings with my kids. And because I've been teleworking for the past 6 months and my schedule has changed, I asked my elementary school daughter the other day, what is it, you know, how do you feel about what's going on, and what have you thought about it? And she's like, oh, it's great. And I'm like, why is it great? She goes, because I get to eat breakfast with you every day. Because I'll work at 6 and I'll take a break when she gets up and I'll eat breakfast with her, and then get her started with school and things like that. And so I've been able to take advantage of those types of opportunities. And not everybody can do that, but it's the reminder that's the kind of things that we want to be focusing on right now. The second thought I wanted to leave you guys with is that, you know, on a good day, when public education is firing on all cylinders, we struggle to support 100% of the students. Like, when we have our best game and everything is working right, we are struggling to get 100%. We can get really, really close. And you see that a lot. But when on our best days, there are always kids that we have to catch. Right now, we are not close to 100%. And all of us need help somewhere, somehow. So first, we start by adjusting our expectation. We're not going to have perfection, and that's okay. None of us have perfection. The other day, one of my daughters almost missed turning in an assignment, and we're here all day to help her do these things. And if you just realize that this is a lot. It's a lot to be trying to work it all the time. It's a lot to have them in virtual school. I never thought I would miss the summer, but I missed the summer because trying to do virtual school and telework is extremely, extremely difficult. And we are all struggling. So don't feel alone in that. It's something that we're all going through. And the thing that I want to leave you with right now is the thing I left you with in April, which is, if you need help with anything, ask for it. There are people in this community, there are people in the district, there are resources. Nobody wants you to fail during COVID. Nobody wants you to fail in general, but specifically right now, we don't want you to fail for sure. And we're trying you have people in your community all around that are trying to help you in every different way. So please ask for help. And I mean, it's things from, yeah, you don't understand this problem, you need your help with your kids, with their school, you need tutoring or whatever. It's if you're hungry because you don't have a meal, the district has the resources to try to help you, people will do whatever we can. So please, if you need anything, ask for help. People the resources are there. We want everybody to try to be successful. We are not looking for perfection. Right now, the goal is to not get sick. That goal has not changed from the spring. If you're at home and you don't have COVID, you are being successful. If you have a child that gets all A's but brings COVID home, we will have failed. Okay? So focus on your family and on your health. Ask for help when you need it, and know that we're here for you guys. And if anybody doesn't have anything else, I think that's it for today. Thank you. Thank you for showing up and staying and being here.
Thanks, everybody. Thanks for being here. We hope to see you back in November. Thank you, Danny. Appreciate it. Meredith, thank you so much for all your tech help in facilitating this. We really appreciate it.
Absolutely. Thank you, Meredith.
Bye, everyone.
Bye.